My name is Chuck Foley. I'm part of the Infor 10X Platform Technologies group. My team is actually responsible for evangelizing and demonstrating the various 10X technologies within all the Infor products that are delivered. So what we're going to go through today is we're going to take a look at the separate pillars of each of the 10X technologies. And the first one that we're going to be speaking to is, and I'm not sure if everybody has heard of this yet, is Infor ION. Right? So ION itself is it's a purpose-built middleware. It's our framework to actually connect all of our Infor applications and have them kind of communicate between each other, right? So we have the ability to connect those applications. We have the ability to actually connect non-Infor applications and have them communicate effectively between and actually consume and publish information to and from the various applications, right? As we're connecting those applications into ION, there's a number of services that come with the middleware, with the ION stack. And you can see those in front of you, right? So things like exception management, so the ION event management. Those are things where we have an application that's connected to ION and is producing transactions and flowing those into ION. You as users can model out exceptions, right? Look for conditions that would raise what we call alerts. And those could be various things. Some of the ones that we're going to demonstrate today are going to feed off of the new IQM, right, the quality management product, indicating that new inspections are occurring or particular inspections have failed. So we'll show you a quick alert and how we build those out and the simplicity of that too as well. Another service we have is workflow, right? So the business process management. Again, you as users would actually model out and your structured process as far as when particular conditions occur with transactions to be able to go through and build out these structured processes. And what we would do is then surface out tasks, right, to various users and departments and teams to actually go through the process and accomplish things. Things you would think of typically with workflows like approval processes too. But we can also do with workflows is like data enrichment, right? So, for instance, if you have a new customer that you're creating, you can take and subjugate the creation of that customer out to various departments and have them fill in the information. So, sending it out to the credit department to have them set up a credit limit, look at their D&B numbers and so on. Send another one out to customer service to get their contact information and so on. Have all that data that's flowing through that workflow come back into the source system and update that information and enrich that data back in, doing that all through ION and all through that workflow process. We also have the service called ION Business Vault, right? So this is the ability to take any of those applications that are connected onto the ION framework, right? Need it be Infor or non-Infor, and take those transactions as they're occurring, right? So, because the ION framework itself is event-driven. So in other words, when an event occurs, right, when I create a new customer or I create a new requisition or I take a requisition and source it into a purchase order, those are all events. So when those events occur, we're actually publishing that data out to ION. So one of the services that can be enacted upon those events, those transactions that are coming into ION, is taking that information and depositing that into our business vault. And that business vault is going to act as a repository for us for a number of different things, right? So operational reporting, right? The ability to just go through and create some ad hoc reports based on that information coming in. Being able to take that information dynamically and on the fly refresh, some data marts, some cubes, so we can now start looking at real-time analytics, real-time dashboards, and so on, right? And the nice thing about it is that since we're connecting all these various applications into ION and depositing that information into the business vault, now you're getting more of a consolidated enterprise reporting view of everything. So, for instance, if I have 6 different systems in my enterprise that create requisitions, now I can actually tie those all together within ION, actually deposit those within the business vault, and now I have, a complete requisition visibility throughout the enterprise, at my fingertips. So very powerful services that come with the ION framework. Now, to get kind of a visual for this, if we look at ION, if we connect all these applications, we have things like Visual, some of our ERP products, right? We even have connectors into what we call business connectors into enterprise applications too as well. So Infor as a company, each one of the development groups has gone through and actually created what we call adapters, and that's basically their on-ramp into the ION framework. So the Visual Development Group, for the past number of months has been creating and developing this adapter. And that adapter basically tells ION, here's the information, here are all the transactions I'm going to publish, and here are all the transactions I'm going to consume off the ION network, right? But we've also created, besides the Infor applications, we've developed business adapters, things like the ability to talk to SAP, for example, right? So we have the ability to go through and actually publish and consume information to and from the SAP applications. Other business adapters that we have out there, we have things like for Oracle eBusiness. We have an adapter set up for Salesforce.com, and that Salesforce.com is actually extended by one of our applications called Inforce, which basically takes our ERP information, right, things like orders, invoices, and so on, and actually infuses that into the Salesforce platform, right? But we also have third-party adapters, right? So if you have legacy applications, in-house built written applications in your enterprise, we have a number of ways of actually connecting and consuming information, again, depending on the technology stack of those applications that you have in-house, right? So we can get to it at the database level, we can get to it using web services, we can get to it using message queues and so on. So a number of different ways that we can actually take and connect third-party applications and connect them directly into ION. And again, once we have them connected into ION, those documents that are coming in are being consumed by ION. Within ION, we're speaking actually a common language, right? This is XML, so the Extendable Markup Language. And we're actually speaking a very particular dialect of XML, which is the WAGES, which is just a standards body that actually created standards for, what does an invoice look like? What does a purchase order look like? What does a customer master look like, right? So as long as everybody's speaking the same language, right, we can basically talk to each other very easily, right? And we can also take and deposit things into, right, the business vault in a common language, right? So as I spoke to the business vault earlier, where we're connecting all these applications in, there's no need anymore because we're doing this in real time and we're talking about standards in a common language and depositing that into this repository. There's no more need for, things like the ETLs or scrubbing that data before we get in there or going to multiple sources to grab that. All that's done by the ION framework. So again, looking at the different services that are there, we've talked about ION Connect, right? So the ability to connect applications into the framework, the ability to integrate those and publish and consume information by any connected application into the ION framework. We talked about workflow, right? The business process management, the ability to create tasks, right, and structured processes within your organization using the modeling tools within ION. And we're going to take a look at each one of those, like the workflow, the event management, how do we create alerts and so on. But what I want to do is I want to take a look at look deeper dive into the business vault. And we're going to do that in a second. One of the things I just wanted to touch upon is within the ION suite, we do have this ION desk that sits on top of all these different services. And what the ION desk is to you is the place that you go to actually model out, alerts, the ability to create those structured processes, right, those workflows. So this is the place where you actually go out and you would create and model out those types of exceptions and workflows. It's also, ION Desk is also an administration portal, so we can go through And some of the tools that are out there have the ability to look at information that's flowing through the ION framework. And in particular, we have a tool out there called OneView, which gives us the ability to look at a transaction as it enters and as it leaves the ION framework. So very useful tool because it shows every single step in transaction, shows the data. So it's a great auditing tool for people that want to look at information and how it's flowed, who's touched it, how is it transformed, what system produced it, and what systems consumed it. Right? All right. So let's take a look then at the business vault, right? So the business vault itself, again, part of the ION framework, right? Any transactions that are flowing through ION, again, Infor or non-Infor. And I probably negated to say that, when we're talking about applications, it doesn't matter for us if they're on-prem or if they're cloud-based. We've built this architecture in a hybrid manner that we can actually consume information regardless of the geography or where that particular application sits, right? But the business vault there is there solely for more enriched reporting, right? So now we're looking at gathering all that information at the enterprise level to be able to present information in real time back to the user so they can make decisions very quickly, right? So, if we're looking at real-time information that's being brought to us, right, instead of the traditional, hey, we have to do a refresh of this data at nighttime, so, at midnight we usually will back up and we'll do the refresh of those data marts and we'll do those ETLs and whatnot. Well, that's like reading yesterday's news, right, because we were looking at stale data. So with the Business Vault, we're looking at real-time information. The nice thing about the Business Vault, too, as well, is that it's an open repository, right? So we understand that people have made investments in reporting tools and BI tools. They can actually take and use this tool as a means, as a repository to be used in conjunction or used as the system of truth for those reports, for those analytics and KPIs and so on, right? Infor has a very wide reach of tools. Dynamic Enterprise Performance Management is our suite that covers a whole varied list of reporting tools, right, from ad hoc to business intelligence to budgeting and forecasting and so on, the ability to create these dashboards. As a matter of fact, we have the ability to actually even surface up dashboards directly from the Business Vault, and this is just an example. This is a sales dashboard, right? So we present information to the user based on their roles within the organization, and we can drive these types of analytics directly to the user via Mingle, and basically show them within their dashboards, right? So I want to step next into Mingle, but I actually have a question out here, and it's asking, can ION be mined for data and replaced as a data warehouse? It certainly can be. It depends on what your strategy is today. It can be used to augment. It can be used as the sole system of record for business intelligence. So yeah, I mean the Business Vault itself is being looked at as the repository for that type of warehousing and reporting and analytics. So, all right, let's take a look at Mingle. Now, Mingle itself is a couple of different things, right? It really has more of a dual purpose within the Infor 10X stack. First of all, it's Infor's unifying interface, right? So all of our products are kind of, within the past 2 years, have been kind of morphing themselves into a common look and feel, right? And we'll take a look at that in a second. But what we're doing is that we're trying to create a common look and feel for all of our applications and house them under this interface, right? The nice thing about it, too, is that it's not just, a pretty look and feel to the application, but it's also it's contextually aware. And I'll demonstrate that in a second, but contextually aware means that as I'm traversing through the application, right, going through particular screens, looking at particular information, that information is being broadcast out to Mingle, and relevant context is being brought to me, right? Reports, graphs, KPIs, maybe possibly even documents, images, content that belongs in purpose. And as I'm going through the application, those are being changed dynamically. But we'll take a look at that in a second. Mingle itself is also a collaborative platform, right? So it's a place that we go in and look for what we talked about earlier, right? Alerts, tasks, and notifications, right? How do I create those exceptions? How do I surface workflow tasks? How do I know when things are complete, right? Those types of things are actually surfaced through the activity feed within Mingle. So it's a collaborative platform. We can collaborate with colleagues. It's funny because when we first came out with this platform, people refer to it as social ERP, or it's similar to Facebook or whatever. If we step back and talk about what it really does, right? It's collaboration. You do that every day. We're doing that right now. We're sitting in a WebEx. We're talking. We're listening. We're going to be asking questions. We're going to but you do it every day with your colleagues, right? You pick up the phone. You instant message people. You send emails. What we do is that we can take that relative, what we call unstructured content that's coming, that's part of the conversation, and infuse that into this Mingle feed, right? So if we're infusing that information, right, into the Mingle feed, right, that collaborative process that happens between team members and colleagues, now we're creating a best practice repository, because now we're capturing all of that knowledge within that activity feed too as well, right? So we can do that and have that as a repository for best practice, but we can also do other things with Mingle, right? And one of the things that we can do is we can follow objects, all right? And this is somewhat unique in terms of Mingle, that we can look at, types of transactions, right? So if we talk about, like, say, the purchase to pay process or the order to cash process, right? We can sit there and start following that process. So, for example, if I have a requisition that comes to me, I can say, let me follow that requisition because it's important to me. I'm an IT director that requisitions for 100 new laptops, right? I need to know about when that requisition is sourced, because when it's sourced into a purchase order, I'm going to have a ship date, right, or receive date on that. So I need to actually start, gathering my troops to go through and start, provisioning out those laptops when they receive. So I start following that requisition. As soon as that requisition is sourced to a purchase order, that information is brought back to me in my feed, right? When that purchase order is received, I'll have that information fed directly back to me in my feed, right? So it's real-time information that's being brought to me because I'm following that object, right, that requisition or that transaction process. But we can also do that for master data, right? So if we look at things like assets or customers, right? If I'm following a customer, anything that happens to that customer, right, their credit limit changes, their address changes, the new sales order gets created, I'll have that information fed directly to me in my feed, right? So if I'm a salesperson, I need to follow, right, a particular customer. He happens to be one of my top 5 customers. I want to see anything that happens to that customer. I'll be notified directly of that, right, in my feed. Another thing that we can do as well is that we can look at transactions and get a 360-degree view of those transactions and drill into that source information within Mingle, within what we call social graph. And I'm going to show you that in a minute as far as the demonstration is concerned. So what you're seeing here, this is an Infor application that happens to be LN, but what we're doing is we're trying to visualize what the Mingle from the interface, the user interface side is, right? So if we look at, and this is someone when they land into Mingle, they've selected applications, and you can see at the top here, this is the masthead. This shows a person when they log into Mingle, all the authorized systems that they have available to them, right? So we're using a couple of different things. We're using Active Directory integration. We're using single sign-on integration, that when someone comes in, it doesn't matter, again, if it's on-premise or cloud-based applications, they're going to be traversing through these by clicking on each one of those icons and being already logged into those systems and so on, right? So all the authorized systems that the user has. But as far as the common look and feel, you'll notice, and I believe Paul's going to show bits and pieces of this, and you'll see this more and more, and especially on Friday, I believe they're going to be showing the Visual 8 product. You can have similar types of drop-down menus, right? So it's a common look and feel as far as the interface is concerned from Mingle. We also have common tabs for the UI, so as you're opening up different menu options. You'll see those tabs go across, the UI. We also have common navigation icons, right? So doesn't matter if you're within the visual product or you're within the Infor quality management product or you're within a supply chain product, you're going to be seeing the same types, right, of these drop-down menus, these common nav and tab type of UIs throughout, right? But we also have, and this is what I talked about earlier, about the contextual web parts, right? So the ability to look at relative context, right, as you're going through the application. So, for instance, I'm in sales orders here, and these are the relative, what we call in-context business intelligence reports that are associated with this. So we have a couple of them here, right? So we have, for instance, like the planned available for a part number. We have our top 5 customers because we're looking at a particular customer, but we also have relative context, right? So specs, right, for these particular items, right? Need it be PDF or a PowerPoint or Excel. Doesn't matter, whatever documents that we can attach to this can be surfaced dynamically within these contextual web parts. All right. So if you think about it, if we look at down here where we have this fields highlighted, right, so this part number, what we do is that in the contextual web parts, right, that part is actually driving this end context BI. So this is showing the planned availability for that particular part based on date, right? So you can see how that particular item, that particular part is actually going to be available within our enterprise over the next, looks like 4 or 5 days, right? So that's as far as Mingle is concerned, more of the common UI, the common look and feel. From a collaborative perspective, right, this is Mingle as far as the social feed, right? So when we land on Mingle, right, again, we have the ability to look at any one of these transactions here, but within Mingle itself, we have a couple of different feeds in here, right? So this is our main feed, right? Main information of transactions, alerts, tasks, notifications that are coming to me, right? So if I look at, the ability to interact with workflow tasks, right? I can see here within workflow tasks a number of different things, right? We get the message, right? Please review this particular purchase order for approval. The nice thing about it is that within Mingle and within the workflow process that's surfaced through ION, we have auditability, so we can see when someone's actually was assigned to that particular task, when that task was completed with the date timestamp. Again, we can attach unstructured content to this structured content, right, by going in. We can add notes to this, we can add attachments to this, and that becomes part of the conversation, right? We also have the ability to share that information too as well, right? So by clicking on that share button, I can sit there and share this information with different colleagues, team members, and so on, to help out in the process, right? So, maybe it's for a particular item that I'm going to approve this purchase order. Maybe it's not coming from the preferred vendor. We need to find out why and so on. So we can use that collaborative process within Mingle to get those answers, right? We also have the ability to surface out, right, alerts, right? So within alerts, again, similar to workflow, but this is just looking for particular exceptions, right? So this one here is looking for requisitions for requesting a new computer for a new hire, right? So, in here I can look at the details of that. That will show me all the relative content that you've modeled out from ION to show these people to, make them aware of what's happening for this particular requisition. Again, similar to workflows, we can share that information, right? So we need to push this out to somebody else, team members, colleagues, whoever. We can actually share and collaborate and look at this alert and do what we want with it. We can also go through and we can follow information as well, right? So as we're collaborating with colleagues, and that looks somewhat similar, so we have team members, we can create groups within Mingle. This information that's coming in to Mingle as far as the users and the groups are brought in through Active Directory. So there's integration there. So if you're creating groups and users, we can sync those up into the Mingle environment too as well, right? But, as we're going through, we can also follow those objects, right? So I can sit there and I can follow this particular object. And what happens now is that this is for a particular requisition. So again, when that requisition is sourced into a purchase order, I'll see that information come to me directly in my feed, right? So pretty powerful, as far as seeing the information right at the minute things happen to make the decisions you need throughout the enterprise, right? So that's one component of the feed. This, what we're seeing here is the social graph, right? So within Mingle, we have the ability to look at different what we call document types, so they're transactions, right? So this happens to be a purchase order, right? So within a purchase order, we can follow those objects. So you see this little icon here, so we can follow that object, right? You'll also see this icon, and I'll talk about that in a second, right? That little purple icon, that's going to become important to us, right? But we can follow those objects, and we can look at all relative content for those objects, right? So, things like if I'm looking at a purchase order, right, I have my customer party master, ship tos, remit tos, contact information, and so on, right? So I can see all relative content. I can click on any one of those pieces of information, and that will gain focus, and that will show that as the center of the universe. So for instance, if I go through and click on that item master, right, I'll see all relative content that's surrounding that item master, like, what warehouses is it available or shipped, can be shipped from or shipped to, and so on, right? So we also have the ability to drill down into that source data. So that's that little purple icon I was just talking to you about, right? So whenever we see this type of information, we know that we can simply just go ahead and click on that information, and that will drill us directly into that source data, right, that created that particular transaction, right? So it's pretty powerful. For someone like me who doesn't know anything about the applications or how to traverse applications, right, it gives me now the ability to go through and actually surface that information very quickly without knowing, okay, now I need to sign on and I need to go in and I need to traverse to go through this menu structure and bring. No, one click brings you right to that information and gives you the source truth of that information for that particular transaction. All right. All right. Mongoose. This is going to become important to us because, as you're going to see on Friday, we're going to be showing the Infor Quality Management product. That product was actually built using what we call our Mongoose framework, right? Now, Mongoose is a rapid application development tool set, and it's been around the Infor family for a number of years, actually quite a number of years. And it's there, and it's actually, as far as a sweet spot for customers who are purchasing Mongoose, it's really kind of set and designed for things like portal creation and extending applications, right? So most of the time we're seeing our customers, and they'll take and build out, say, a supplier portal or a vendor portal or a combination of both, using this tool set. We internally use Mongoose as a development framework to build out enterprise applications, right? So we have a hotel management system. We have the Infor Quality Management System. Visual is being rewritten. Sightline, another one of our ERP products, is written with the Mongoose tool set. So we have a number of different enterprise-level applications that have been built with this Mongoose framework. Again, I mentioned the portal, right, as a sweet spot for our customers and what they use the tool for. But we can even use the tool for creating even those individual in-context web applications, right? So what I showed on the previous screen within Mingle, we use Mongoose to actually create some of those. So our internal development group uses that tool for relative contextual web parts for each one of the applications. The nice thing about Mongoose is that it's ION ready, right? So if we need to start infusing events, right, and transactions, all that framework, all that ability to have an on-ramp into ION is already built. So if you start building applications with Mongoose, you're already that application you're building is already ION ready. It's also Mingle ready, right? So the look and feel, right, is there, right? So we can infuse nicely into, right, that Mingle framework, right? Similar look and feel, menu structure, the look and feel, the branding, and so on. But, in collaboration with being ION ready, now you have the ability to take advantage of all the things I showed you in the previous slides with Mingle to be able to take and surface those tasks, alerts, notifications, and actually start using the collaborative process, the follow process, right, within Mingle to be able to look at information, right, through that through those activity feeds and that collaborative process within Mingle. All right. This is a screenshot. I was going to show you a screenshot of IQM, but I don't want to steal everybody's thunder from Friday, so I'm going to pull back the reins. And this is actually a proof of concept that we did for one of our customers about a month ago. We went through and created this portal for them. It's a supplier portal, basically showing, in this case here, it's pending invoices. But you can see a similar look and feel for that, same branding, same coloring, same type of menuing structure, that we would have for our products. And basically building this out and creating this. Just a note on that, that proof of concept worked for us. So the customer actually purchased out Mongoose in one of our ERP suites to continue on the process. So that's just to give you kind of a look and feel for what to expect as far as building out those types of portals with the Mongoose application. Okay, so what I'm going to do before handing this over to Paul, I'm going to go through and I'm going to share my desktop. I'm going to show you the a little bit on the what we call ION desk, right? So what you're seeing here is I'm tied into one of our systems, right? This is ION desk, right? So the ability to actually, again, start modeling out, right, those alerts, those tasks, right, those workflows and so on. But to understand and get a kind of an overview of this, we look at some of the building blocks, right, for ION. And some of those building blocks start with connections, right? So with connections, this is really the place where we're telling ION, here are all the applications that I'm connecting in. Here's where their address is, right? Here are the credentials that I need to get to them. And basically, here are all the documents that are going to be published and consumed from those applications. So, for instance, I look at this instance of Visual here, right? So if I look at that, pretty simple stuff, actually. It just basically shows my connection information, some credentials. The more important thing here is to show, right, what documents are being produced by that particular application, right? So here are all the documents that Visual currently either produces or consumes from ION, right? So things like contact information, customer party information, item master information, and so on, purchase orders, quotes, inspection orders, right, so on. Right, so we have a whole slew of different documents. So this connection point is telling ION this is how we're connecting this Visual application into the ION framework. And another example of that, too, as well, because it's going to become relative for Friday, is the Infor quality management, right? So similar thing, right? Connection, string, my credentials and so on. But, here are some of the documents that are being, consumed or published from this application, right? So inspection orders, item master, and so on. So those are my connection points, right? So with connection points, now that we've established these are all the different applications that are connected to ION, now we need to tell, hey, how does that information flow from Visual to IQM, and how does it flow from IQM, say, back to Visual? I mean, those are done through what we call document flows. So if we look at the document flows, we can look at, particular types, and the one I want to kind of focus on is this first one here, right? So the ability to look at how the information, right, is orchestrated, how the data is orchestrated between those applications. We can look at the relative connection points, right? So these are the connection points that we just looked at. But we can look at the relative context that's being and transaction that's being pushed between those. So for instance, from Visual to IQM, these are all the different transactions that are being processed between them, right? So this is, again, part of that adapter, right, that Visual adapter, right, and that certified integration between Visual and IQM, right? So if we look at IQM going back to Visual, these are the different types of transactions that are being processed between those products, right? So this kind of gives you an idea of right, how am I moving that information between those applications, right, the document flow, right, the orchestration, the movement of that data between those applications. So once we've established what applications are on the ION framework and which one and how we're passing information between them, the next thing we want to do is start looking at how do we actually monitor for exceptions, how do we create workflows, and so on, right? So just a quick overview, because I'm not going to get into too much of the details of this, but we can look at, a couple of them out here, but ones that I've created, we have like a failed inspection. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to basically create a copy of that so I don't mess anything up, right? But in here, right, you'll notice it's a tab type of format. We're saying what document are we looking at, and this happens to be an inspection order, right? For ION, we have a whole slew of different types of documents. I'll just cut out. These are all the standard, what we call business object documents, all the standard transactions that we have. We can extend some of those transactions, right? And we can actually even create custom, right, what they call custom bods. So, even if there isn't a standard type of transaction for something, we can actually create what they call a custom bod. But really what you're doing is saying, for this monitor, I want to look at inspection orders, right? And this is the relative context that I want to bring on an inspection order. So I want to see, the action code, the ID of that, the quantities, and so on, right? So this relative context for that inspection order I want to bring into this alert. In there, I want to raise certain conditions, and that condition is if the quantity rejected is greater than 0, right? So if I know I have a quantity in the rejected quantity greater than 0, that means I have a rejection, right? So that inspection failed, right? So once I create that condition, right, I can use that, right, as the rule, and then basically I'm just sending information out to the user, right? So this inspection, I have some replacement variables, right? So the inspection number, right, that's dynamically put in. For purchase order, and then the ID, so the purchase order ID is infused in there, has been rejected, right? So that's the information that goes out for that alert, right? So where does that go out to? Well, whoever you want it to go out to, right? So we can go out to relative users, groups. If an email address is part of that transaction, we can dynamically use that, right? So a number of ways that we can send those that alert out to the users. We can send it via email, and we automatically will send that out to that Mingle feed, right, as an alert, right, what we talked about earlier, right? So what I want you to get out of this, though, is that as we're looking at setting up that alert is you'll notice one thing in there is that I didn't program at all. There's no programming language, right? No coding, right? Went through a couple of tabs, brought in a document, went through, said I want to bring this content in, created a condition for it, came back out and activated it, right? So, you come in, you activate it, and off it goes. So that monitor is running now. So whenever a failed, right, inspection, right, that rejected quantity is greater than 0, for an inspection order occurs, I'm going to surface that alert, right? So very easy, very simple process to do, right? And again, when I'm saying surfacing, right, this is Mingle, right? And in here, in my activity feed, brought to me, right? So I had a failed inspection monitor. I also had a new inspection monitor. So I can see in here, right, here's the alert. New inspection, the inspection number, 89, has been created for a purchase order and the purchase order number, right? I could share that content if I want. I could show the details of that content. I can add information to that if I want, right, assign it to me, right? I can add attachments. I can create notes and so on, right? I can share that information, right? So there's a lot of things that we can do, right, for these alerts, for these workflow tasks, and so on, right? So very simple process, very simple framework, really kind of geared not towards the IT folks, but more towards the business analysts, right? The folks who know how information is passed through the enterprise, know a little bit about the back-end tables, right? Knowing enough to be dangerous, right? But knowing how to create these models very simplistically, right? All right, so I'm going to pass this back to Paul. You can continue on.
All right, very good. I am going to also share an application here. Back, share remote desktop. That should come up. All right, are you seeing my screen now?
Yep.
Okay, good. Well, that was really good, Chuck.
Sure.
I think that shows a lot of what the technology can do. I'm going to talk a little bit about what does it do specifically with Visual right now today. Maybe we don't have customers on our latest version of Visual. They're back a version or two. Mingle still applies. You can still use Mingle today, even though the Visual application doesn't run in what used to be called Workspace. It still runs in its own heavy client format, but it still can share information with Mingle. And I think the collaboration piece is still a hot piece for our customers to take a look at. So I've got a couple of things, and work with me on this if you can a little bit. I've got 3 different users that I've got logged in under Mingle. So we're going to jump around a little bit, and we'll bounce between them. So I'm using different browsers to show each of those. Before that, I'm going to jump over to right back where Chuck was. We have a workflow right in here, and just the same way Chuck was getting into each of these, workflows are just as easy to get to and pretty simple to build. I'm going to walk through one of the ones we've built out here for a quick quote. We built a very simple flow we have, and I'm going to just show the details. So it is a workflow for building a quote. And the idea here was, I think I have to log in again. I think it's been a few minutes since I've done it. But the idea here was you need to start with engineering. We've got a quote that comes in, but we want to check with pricing. We want to check with the customers in here and send it back to the customer, the salesperson. We want to keep that into a flow, but we know that some of the quotes that come in go more than one direction. Back in my manufacturing days, quotes were kind of a collaborative effort, so I think Mingle fits that area very well. So I'm going to jump back out. I'm going to go into Visual itself. I'm going to create a quote, and from the quote, we're just going to go and pick a customer, and we'll pick somebody like Jackson Industries, and I'm going to insert a line, and we'll make it for pick a part on here. It really doesn't matter which part. It's one of these quarter plate, and quantities of, I'm just going to put a quantity of 1 in here and just leave it at that. And I'm going to save it. It doesn't matter. We'll just save that out here. So we've got quote number 82, so QT0082. So I'm going to jump over to one of my feeds that I have, and I have a couple of different people logged in. So the first person I'm going to jump over to is going to be Tricia, and she's going to be in our Firefox. So imagine, if you will, I'm Tricia jumping in here, and you saw me just create that quote. It's already showing up in her feed. So I've got this window kind of minimized a little bit. That quote is already here. It's already starting the process. A new quote's been entered. It's assigned to her. She can take a look at this. She can share that information, as Chuck was talking about. We can take those details. We can assign it to herself if we need to. I'm going to go ahead and assign it to myself and approve it. Just say, yep, I'm working on it. Because I want to get it into the process and have a couple of other people start looking at this quote as well. So once I've done that, I should be able to go over to a couple of other people. So I should be able to go over to Rob. I'm going to click over on this tab in here. So we've got Rob back in Chrome. Bear with me. It's hard to show 3 different people logging in onto the same quote, or onto the same Mingle, or onto the same system with just one system. So you see it's already showing up. It's coming through here. We've got a quote coming through. It's quarter plate steel that's coming through. If I've got some questions about this, so things just that Chuck was mentioning, we can share this with people. So we can say, all right, Trish, what were you thinking about it? And as I start typing her name in here, I just put the @ sign in, and it comes up with the other people in my feed that I already know about. I'm going to pick Tricia in here. I could highlight some other things while we're in here. I'm going to do the hashtag. So hashtags pretty popular with a number of social media apps. Infor Mingle does the same thing. So I'm going to put the same quote number in here, and I'm going to put that same one in and ask a question. And put the question in, but I did the share. I hit OK. So I get that pops up through. That comes through to one feed. We can come through and ask questions about that. If I put those hashtags in, we can now browse on those up in the search anyone can browse on those. Where I'm going with this is with a quoting process, there's usually a team of people are working on it, and there's usually you're passing things from one quote to another quote or another person, and there's some information that passes that may not really be on the document itself. You may have questions and conversations, if you will, outside of what's our core application. So it's not going to be in the quoting application. You can track all of that information, and you can filter on that. So one of the nice things here, I know back in my manufacturing days, we'd have our engineers would do some quoting, and they'd talk amongst themselves. They'd make a call over to purchasing to ask about certain types of material. They'd put some information in, and they'd quote certain things. But we had no history of that conversation ever taking place. Were we using the high carbon steel or the standard steel? What were the parameters that we needed to put in here? All of that can be placed inside of Mingle, and it's all traceable. So you can go back and search for any of that information in here, as well as even if someone leaves, you still have that ability to go back and trace for it. The challenge in the past has been email was that transport to move the conversation between all of this. Really doesn't work in the business world. When someone leaves, you really can't start filtering through someone's Outlook files, put it into the business system and where it applies. I'm going to step off to the side here and take a look at one of the social pieces of Mingle. Chuck showed this a little bit. We'll look at it with some visual data in here. So I'm going to start just typing a little bit. It comes up. I'm going to look at the customer party master, and I'm going to say look at all of them, and I'm going to have a bunch because I've got a multi-site database in here. And I'm going to pick this one that has already got some data in. I know we've got a bunch of data. I just clicked on that one customer ID for that one site, and I get all the information in here, whether they're customer orders, invoices. You can see shipments. You can see opportunities that are out here. And as I scroll down, there's just more and more information that's listed on this particular with this one particular customer. I can then drill into one of those. I'm just clicking on this one sales order. It's going to call up that sales order and tell me everything about that sales order. So what was the part that we used? What was the customer that we had on there? Any of that information is available. I can drill into these. Now, we don't have the little purple square on these in Visual yet. We'll have that in Ada. We'll be able to drill right into Visual. And we're going to be adding that to IQM. I don't think that'll be available day one with IQM, but it will be shortly after that. We'll be able to drill right back into the application that Chuck was showing. But we can also follow things in here and follow different types of document, as Chuck mentioned. Maybe this purchasing agent wants to follow a particular vendor or particular parts or whatever it is. It could be that special order that's coming in that everybody needs to feed. They can follow that with Mingle, and all of that's going to come into their feed inside of here. We're running a little bit tight on time, so I'm going to cut the demo a little bit short for the moment, and just so we have time to answer some questions. But I wanted to get everybody comfortable with the idea that you can jump into Mingle today with some of the newer releases of Visual. You don't have to be on 7.1.2. 7.1 will do it, and I believe even 7.1 will have some of it. Each version you go back, we have fewer and fewer BODs that aren't as deep. So the more current you are on it, the deeper the BODs go. We pass a lot more information, and we support more BODs, and those are those business objects that Chuck was talking about. All right, so let's stop sharing here. And let's go back to those slides. And did we want to talk a little bit about motion?
No, I think we're short on time, so I think we can bypass that.
Yeah, just mention that we do have Road Warrior is out there. We have a number of customers using that. It uses ION, so all those BODs that we saw passing back and forth, that's how that data goes back and forth between those. A couple more slides on there. Let's just move into the starter kit. Chuck, you wanted to mention a little bit about that?
Yeah, and this, again, offered out to the Visual customer base. This is our starter kit. So what you saw today as far as the ability to create those alerts and those workflows and so on, that's done through what we call our ION process cores, right? So with the Visual Starter Kit, what we're doing is offering 100 Mingle users, right, so people who can interact with those types of alerts and tasks. We're offering a core process, so it gives the ability to connect in Visual, start working with that. And we actually give 10 concurrent Mongoose users. So if you wanted to start using Mongoose to either extend applications or create net new ones, or bring some legacy applications, to a more modern look and feel, we have the ability through Mongoose to do that. So we offer that as part of the starter kit. It's all available for $10,000 USD, and we're offering it. We actually offered it last year, and we've extended it out now to the end of our fiscal, which is May 31st, 2014. So it's basically, if you're looking at all those individual components and how they're priced out, that's about a 70% discount on that. So it's a great way to more or less dip your toe into the water of ION and Mingle and Mongoose, into that 10X stack to kind of get yourself familiar with it, see the usefulness of that, and be able to actually then potentially start extending that out to other Infor applications you have in-house or non-Infor applications that you want to basically start utilizing, things like workflow or exception management, some things that maybe that particular application doesn't have today. All right?
Yeah, and just to add to that, with IQM coming out, it uses Mongoose. So if you want to do some of the development, build some more applications, extend the application, it's the time to buy. And Visual is going to be in Mongoose in about a year or so. So if you're going to buy it, now would be the time to buy this at a very discounted rate. It's probably going to be much higher once those products come out, just because that's where the pricing's heading. So I just want to get people's attention. If you're going to be with Visual for a while, now's a good time to go out and place that order. It's a small price to pay early to have something that's going to be very powerful going forward.
Now there was a question that did come across on the Q&A panel.
Yep, I did see a couple over there. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So one that came in is talking about monitors within ION Desk, and said, what if you need to create a monitor that requires multiple tables, right? And what I did was, when I showed the monitor, I showed, for one, particular business object document, which was the inspection order. But we have the ability to create monitors for multiple transactions, if you would, right? So, for instance, I could say, here's my, I can marry up an alert, bring in a sales order, and then a shipment, right, or an allocation or a pick. So if I have a sales order and I marry it up with I can marry those together and say, okay, use the reference in there to say, basically, if I have a shipment and I don't see that particular, that sales order, but I don't see a shipment within a certain number of days, or if if it's 1 day before the shipment date and I don't see the shipment transaction come in for that sales order, fire off that alert. So there is a way to actually use multiple, and we've created and structured the model for monitors to use multiple tables and have the relationships already built between those particular types of transactions, within the ION framework. So yeah, definitely, it was built that way, and it's actually a great question. So thanks, Brent.
I think the next two are for you as well. There's one from Don. Please define the concept of the core ION process. Is it a separate one needed to connect to each app, like Visual, VQ, and Motion and all the other apps?
No, I mean we look at each one of the applications holistically, right? So if we say we need a core of ION process for Visual, it's Visual and all of its subcomponents, right? If you wanted to extend it and make it maybe, if you bring in, say, I have Visual and I want to bring in IQM, so that's another whole separate product. So that would be, part of the core licensing. Not to get mired down about the pricing details of it, but basically a core will sustain, right, 2 Infor applications, right? So if you have Visual and you want to tack in IQM, we can do that. The starter kit pricing really is a limited core, so it's really geared more specifically for, looking just at Visual, right? To, like I said, kind of get your, you dip your toe in to kind of feel the waters on, the Infor 10X stack. So, but yeah, I mean, from a an overview type of thing, yeah, we don't look at the individual components. We look at the entire product suite as one application, if you would.
Okay. Yeah, that goes on hardware.
Yeah, hardware kit. I mean, the thing with ION, and it depends on how you're going to be utilizing this. ION itself is a very lightweight architecture, and we built it that way. Pretty minimal. Obviously, depends upon number of transactions that you're producing. It's a pretty minimal footprint, and I can send out generics that we have. And we kind of break it down, if people ask questions like this, into a small, medium, and large size corporation, as what it would take for ION. On the Mingle side, believe it or not, when you were looking at Mingle, both from a collaborative perspective and through looking at as far as the application is concerned, that's actually SharePoint. We've built Mingle over SharePoint. The nice thing with the version of SharePoint that we've built it over is Foundation, so that's a free download from Microsoft. But as far as the hardware requirements for that, we just go off of the Microsoft recommendations, which is, I believe it's a 4-core, 8-gig machine used for that. Again, that covers, that'll cover your 100-user limit and beyond. So, again, we kind of break that down into a small, medium, and large. So, Mark, if you need more specifics, as far as your particular size and so on, just ping us after this call, and we'd certainly send that out to you.
All right. I don't think I see any more questions out there.
Nope.
All right. So just want to remind everyone, this was just day 3 of 5-day Summit Week. Coming up tomorrow, we go to the PCM product, which is the Product Configuration Management tool. Very impressive tool, very web-based. It's very graphical, so it fits the visual market very well, and that it is very visual in how it designs things. And then again on Friday, we're going to dive deeper into Mongoose and look at IQM, and it's going to kind of give you a flavor of how Visual 8.0 is going to look and feel. So for more information, you can contact us here. But I do want to thank everybody for your time today, and thank you everyone for attending. Have a good day.